God, go away. I'll give you my wallet. Phil, help! Phil, help! In my last video game topic, I talked about the masterful brilliance of the peripheral scare in Brian Clark's 2022 demonic possession horror, The Mortuary's Assistant. If you haven't watched that video, firstly, you probably should, but for context, the game takes advantage of the player's perception of their surroundings to randomly trigger supernatural entities that can subtly linger from the shadows, from the corner of your eye, or appear and then evaporate before you have time to realize what happened. Nah, I'm good. Wait, what the fuck? It's a powerful and unpredictable means of immersion, because instead of traditionally throwing jump scares in your face with obnoxious sound cues, less becomes more as your senses are heightened to be more alert and observant of your environment, playing precisely into the innate vulnerability the genre exposes us to. However, what if instead of being purely an emotional obstacle where one could miss the scare, your job as the player was to actively find it? Enter the Exit 8. While not a scary game when compared to The Mortuary's Assistant, the 2023 Japanese liminal horror Exit 8 by solo developer Kotake create, and by extension its follow-up Platform 8, which we will talk about later in the video, has a brilliant mechanic to engage with you psychologically. Now, if you have any other recommendations for games and media like this, please do let me know about them in the comments, because I'm always on the lookout for strange and unique experiences that often go unseen. The concept of Exit 8 is disarmingly simple. You're immediately dropped into a photorealistic yet acutely off-putting metro station, where you find yourself trapped in a perpetual loop of repeating the same hallway until you figure out how to ascend your way to the titular Exit 8, where you will find your freedom. That's basically it. There's no story, no lore, no combat, no interaction, and no other setting to speak of. However, the twist is that each time you re-enter said corridor, there's an obscure possibility that something will be off or different about this environment. In order to progress, you must determine whether an anomaly is present. If not, you proceed forward to the next loop and the exit increases, but if there is an anomaly, you must turn back and bail the fuck out of there, because being wrong and moving forward, or being confronted by the more overt anomalies, resets the entire loop. Ooh, let's not do that. You can literally run in perpetuity, and the transition between loops will remain eerily seamless. There's no stutter, no loading screen, no blemish to indicate anything has changed, thus absorbing you into this nightmarish rabbit hole as you battle with palpable disorientation, a sinister sense of mystery, and the itching sensation that something might be watching you. Now, don't worry, there are no jump scares or big menacing cosmic monsters. Sure, some anomalies will outright attack you, but it's ultimately the quiet uncanniness and increasing anxiety of your decision making that drives the suspense. The thing is, it does genuinely become difficult to determine whether certain things are anomalies or you're just doubting your own senses and the setting, because once you lock in on the many components of the hallway, such as the doors, the lights, the flooring, the posters on the wall, the vent, the cameras, and of course your untrustworthy friend Phil, he's not actually called Phil, but fuck you Phil, you backstabbing prick, you will obsess over every fine detail and lose sense of time. It keeps you on edge by constantly fluctuating between subtle and abstract. It can be as minute as a change on one of the posters, to the positioning of the lights, to outright surreal horrors like faces in the tiles, this creepy lady staring through the door, to a sign that literally follows you, and screw it, whatever these two suspicious lads are up to. To my understanding, the current version I played for this video had 36 unique anomalies, yet regardless, it's a compressed ball of chaos where you're effectively always searching for a glitch in the matrix. I mean, there's no escaping the evident symbolic parallel of the metro station in the Matrix, given how it represents sensory rabbit holes that disillusion and disconnect us from reality. We're not going to get into the existential philosophy of the Matrix, otherwise we'll be here all day. I fucking see you smiling, Phil. You've never done that before. Now, before we dive deeper into the madness, this video is sponsored by Raycon. With Mother's Day approaching, it's a great time to find a gift that actually fits into your mom's everyday life and perhaps even your own. Whether she's going for a morning walk, running errands, or talking on the phone, Raycon's essential open earbuds are the perfect option because she can listen to her favorite music and podcasts while still hearing what's happening around her. The sound stays clear and balanced without feeling closed off from her surroundings, ensuring constant safety and awareness, particularly during busy times, which I know my mom would appreciate when she's on her usual evening shopping escapades. Open earbuds never sacrifice on quality as they lightly and snugly fit over your ear and never fall out, which is great for me when I'm at the gym or just trying to keep up with my doggo Cheddar during his many adventures. And with 8 hours of playtime and 36 hours of battery with the charging case, my Raycon Essential open earbuds are locked and loaded every day of every week for all the action to come. Join over 3 million customers at half the price of expensive brands with a 30-day happiness guarantee, and celebrate the mums in your life by scanning the QR code on screen, clicking the link in the description, or going to buyraycon.com/RyanOpen to get 15% off essential open earbuds today and be the hero that every mum needs. While you can complete your first run of Exodiate in about 20 minutes, after the credits you'll be spawned back into the game and told how many anomalies there are yet to discover, and while I'm not one to replay these types of games because I simply don't have the time, I felt a strange obligation to find them all, to cleanse the station so to speak, and appease whatever meta presence was communicating with me as the player. Now, there has been a critically acclaimed film adaptation that was released last year in Japan and is due a Western release around the time of this video's upload, which I've not yet seen, but I'm going to assume it leans much more into a character study to give it that necessary theatrical substance. However, you can certainly play around with the ceaseless ambiguity and apply your own headcanon to build some thread of a narrative, like, oh, you're trapped in purgatory and you must overcome your demons to make it to the afterlife, or something to that effect. Yet, if I'm going to play around with the theory angle for a bit of fun besides my Matrix motif, I guess you could humor it as a bit of a metaphor for the daily grind of a work-centric culture where you become so familiarized with your commute that your boredom, depression, and stress amongst a never-ending cycle has started messing with your head as you drift towards senseless burnout. Obviously, I'm projecting with that as a cry for help, but there's certainly something to the precise mundanity of its chosen setting. Based on my experiences in the London tube station, for example, it can be a disorientating, displacing, and sometimes dehumanizing labyrinth that, while designed to take you places, ironically feels like time is standing still as the bustling world above you just keeps on turning. Underground, we're all just lost souls trying to get where we need to be, and it's a sentiment that's certainly evoked even more strongly in Platform 8. Of course, at this point, I should probably address the phenomenon of liminal space, which is a topic I've only explored via the Backrooms, which ignited this trend of eerie, uncanny, minimalistic games and analog horrors that captured the enigmatically off-putting nature of empty settings. I'm not going to go too deep into liminal horror here because I honestly think there are better examples to convey the complex emotional aura of the topic, particularly regarding nostalgia and melancholy. However, Exodiate taps into what I think worked best about Backrooms before it developed towards its shadowy government conspiracy angle. In other words, I want to give the original 2019 4chan post its much deserved credit on the matter by conveying a microcosmic purity that forgoes meaning or purpose. This isn't a punishment. You weren't chosen to be here. There is no grander logic to attain or study. Echoing the no-clip logic of its origins, you're simply here because you were randomly unlucky enough to be so. Phil? Are you getting taller? In an interview with game makers via Automaton Media, developer Kotake Create explained that while initial inspiration was taken from an earlier anomaly spotting game, I'm on Observation Duty, its visual design drew from the MC Escher-esque aesthetics of Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. As such, if we account for the psychological themes of that film where the protagonist spirals into madness due to the hostility of an empty haunted hotel he's isolated within, Exit is a maze manifested to assimilate those unfortunate. Hell, if you want to take this concept further, the constant blending of faces and eyes as recurring motifs within the environment suggest you were not the only one to be consumed by it, with one anomaly even literally telling you to turn back as if its previous victims are trying to help you, and this is all emphasized further in my opinion in Exit 8's follow-up, Platform 8. The Platform 8 is understandably polarizing compared to its predecessor, as it retracts much of the unsettling minimalism in favor of whatever the fuck abject horror this is. I was also initially divided with Platform 8 coming fresh off of Exit 8 because it is much more horror-centric as opposed to adjacent, but I came to respect Kotake Create for realizing that doing the same thing again isn't necessarily going to capture the same magic, so they might as well experiment a bit. The goal is still ultimately to escape the loop, but this time you're confined within a continuous train where you can only move forward as opposed to running away at the sight of an anomaly. As such, it makes for a more explicit puzzle game where several anomalies have to be approached in contextual ways to make it to the next compartment. Some require you to simply find them, others you need to keep your eyes on and vice versa so they don't attack, several need to be carefully evaded, and the rest are pure vibes and just require you to wait them out to proceed. As I said, while Exit 8 alludes to nightmarish imagery, particularly regarding eyes and faces, Platform 8 makes it its bread and butter by leaning into stronger instances of hostility and morbidity that tap further into the notion of an environment assimilating lost souls into a different eternal dimension. One minute you'll see bloody handprints, the next there's a headless spirit, other times you'll end up playing hide and seek with a creepy little girl, and then out of nowhere you can basically end up in Silent Hill. Seriously, one anomaly causes fog to seep into the train as it comes to a random stop, and you can just freely exit the train if you wish, but like Neo in the Matrix Revolutions, the game will literally abandon you at a looping platform where the only way to escape is to reset the game. It's certainly missing that subtle liminal surrealism, but I would be lying if I said I wasn't caught off guard a few times given the offensive playstyle that means you have no choice but to face your fears, so to speak. In a different interview with Automaton Media, Kotake Create explained that Platform 8's design went through multiple iterations until landing on its current form of cleverly streamlining its design down to one forward motion. Both games are developed to be instinctual and intuitive without the need for a tutorial. In fact, neither game has a title screen, as you're just immediately dropped into the world and trusted to rely on your own intelligence, which, speaking for myself, isn't often a good thing. Anyway, in drawing this to a close, while also absent of a narrative, Platform 8 does allude strongly to what I said earlier about the desire to banish the anomalies and cleanse the settings to make the game feel complete, because to get the true ending for Platform 8, you do actually need to find all the anomalies to extend the original ending, which sees you exit at a platform, slowly ascend the stairs, turn a few corners, and would you believe it, you arrive at the Exit 8. That's right, it's a prequel, baby. While both games are barely an hour long, what makes them so effective as liminal horrors is how they force your engagement with the setting itself to confirm the abnormalities within it. It's ultimately ambiguous, but to escape you essentially have to solve aspects of that ambiguity and keep tangible accounts of every detail to make necessary progress. There are many times where you'll be met with just as much frustration as you will confusion, but it's then released by a remarkable sense of relief when you find yourself making the correct decision and pushing forward to the end. It rewards your observation and intuition, but punishes you for trying to race or cheat it. There is no time sensitivity, but it evokes an inherent urgency as you spiral deeper down the seemingly repetitive rabbit hole. Neither game is necessarily groundbreaking, but their individual design goes beyond the pure creepy vibe of liminal space to deliver a brooding environmental puzzle that toys with the sensation that when the world around us begins to feel strange, scary, and overwhelming, it makes you second guess the reality of the spaces you inhabit.